Our story begins with an aid vehicle arriving at the shelter. At that moment, our hero Yoon earns merit points for his good deeds. The shelter director approaches him, expressing her gratitude, and tells him that without his help the shelter would have been shut down. Yoon responds, "I always love doing good deeds, and there's no need to thank me for anything." At that moment, we see Young earning an additional 500 points because of his words. Meanwhile, Yoon's total points are quite substantial, exceeding 11,000. Our hero then begins to leave the place. We also learn more about him. He has no home or car, and his parents have passed away. After that, Young arrives at Uncle Ulo's house and gestures for him to open the door. Uncle Ulo asks if Yoon has done any good deeds recently. Yoon replies, "Of course I did. As you know, it was my parents' last wish, but in truth Yoon did this because of the system he possesses." Yoon goes up to his room, enters it, and tells us that his parents disappeared without a trace. Exactly 2 years ago, leaving him only a system and one message. At that time, something strange happens in the city. We see a red moon, and a faint voice says that a disaster is coming, and that only those who do good deeds will survive. Yoon sits by the window, remembering that he spent the last 2 years doing charitable work, accumulating many points, but he doesn't know what those points are for. At this moment, Yoon places a glass of water on the table, but suddenly he sees a red spot appear in the glass, turning it into something resembling blood. Is shocked by this, and looks outside the room to find the entire world has turned a terrifying shade of red. After that, the system appears before Yoon and congratulates him on becoming eligible to participate in the Sin game, informing him that his first participation will be in exactly 24 hours. Yoon doesn't understand anything that's happening, so he reaches out to touch the system message on the ground. As soon as he touches it, he feels like his hand has entered the blood. Yoon starts wondering what might happen next. Then, a golden light appears in the place, and Yoon turns around to find the merit system screen. On the screen, a message informs you that the system has now merged with the Sin game. Is still clueless about what's going on, and he's on the verge of losing his mind with everything happening. He tries to calm himself and thinks about withdrawing from the game he's entangled in and ending it all, but unfortunately the system ignores Yoon's desire to withdraw and informs him that they will now create an account for him in the game. Indeed, the account is created, and the countdown begins. Yoon says to himself, "It seems like I have no choice but to participate in the game." He tries to understand the situation more, so he takes out his mobile phone and searches for any information related to the Sin game. At that moment, a message appears telling him that if he has received an invitation to the game, he should enter the website immediately, and if he heard about it from someone, he should contact them. Yoon starts to grasp the situation, realizing that this game has existed for some time since they have an official website. He then begins to browse the available information on the website, discovering that the game is extremely real, involving monsters and illogical phenomena that have no scientific explanation. He also finds notes on the site stating that he should try to stay as safe as possible, and that he is expected to remain there and complete every task he receives. Successfully completing these tasks will grant him powerful treasures and rewards, but failure will result in severe consequences. The last note he sees on the website states that the game has nothing to do with his personal life. Yoon thinks about it for a moment and realizes that the game is incredibly dangerous, but it is also full of opportunities. He then recalls that he now has more points than any other beginner in the game, so he decides to hold out until the next day to see what awaits him. He also remembers that he has stocked up well on food, water, and clothes in recent days, so he prepares himself and puts on a fancy suit. But suddenly, as he is putting on the suit, he notices that the objects around him in the apartment start to disappear. He becomes frightened when he sees that his own body is also beginning to vanish. At that moment, he receives a message from the game informing him that it will begin in 15 minutes and that he will be transported to the preparation area. Yoon steps into the vortex and finds himself transported to another place. Suddenly, he finds himself sitting at a table and begins to look around, noticing that there are several other people present as well. Suddenly, an old man collapses, and Yoon gets up to check on him and offer help. At that moment, someone slams the table with their hand, and everyone looks at him in surprise. The man starts speaking to them, saying, "You're all beginners here, right?" He asks if anyone has participated in the game before. The girl next to him, visibly nervous, responds, "Does that mean you've played the game before? And are the rumors about it on the internet true?" The man replies, confirming that everything is true, and explains that they will participate in the game once a week. Everyone is shocked and filled with fear upon hearing this. Then the man slams the table again, this time angrily, and says, "You must understand that you will be playing a life or death game once a week until death finally catches up with you." Yoon remains calm, realizing that the man is only speaking this way to assert his experience in the game. Because of this, Yoon decides to try and flatter him to gather any useful information quickly. Yoon starts clapping and says, "Surely this game won't be a challenge for someone as strong as you, and I hope you'll teach me from your experience." The man pleads by Yoon's words, replies, "But my experience is just modest," and advises him to avoid getting involved in others' affairs. and to stay out of trouble as his personal survival is what matters most here. The man continues telling Yoon, let me give you some advice. First, don't be surprised by anything you see here because you'll encounter ghost spirits and demons as if it's completely normal. Second, and most importantly, try your best not to break the game's rules because doing so might hasten your death. You enlists, carefully recalling that the websites had mentioned that the rules here are fluid, but he's still struggling to fully grasp what it all means. At that moment, one of the girls present tries to get their attention by coughing and says, I just received a message to open the store. If anyone knows anything about this, please help me. Everyone is shocked because they all received the same message at the exact same moment. The experienced man calms them down and tells them to take a look, explaining that they can buy items from this store, but payment is made through points that can only be earned by playing and winning. The girl wearing glasses is puzzled while another person reacts angrily, saying, it seems like this game is teasing us because they've shown us the store, but we can't buy anything. The old man raises his hand and asks the expert if he can pay money to get points. Instead, the expert responds, it seems your imagination is quite wild because you can only obtain these points by exchanging them for artifacts infused with spiritual energy. Meanwhile, Yoon is listening to everything happening, and of course he is overjoyed because of the points he possesses. He becomes even more excited when he discovers that the system informs him he can use the merit points he has accumulated, with each merit point converting into achievement points. Yoon begins calculating his current merit points and multiplies them by 10, realizing he has 114 million points. Finally, Yoon finds the benefit he had been searching for in the merit points he had gathered over the past 2 years. He enters the store and starts browsing the products and their prices, deciding to convert a portion of his merit points to buy literally everything in the store, and so he converts 10,000 merit points and receives 100,000 achievement points in return. Without waiting, he purchases all the available products. Suddenly, at the same time, a ghost appears and the sound of songs fills the place where Yoon is. Everyone hears this sound, and a girl mentions that she hears the songs now. The expert suddenly screams as he realizes that chaos is beginning to unfold and urges everyone to stay calm, informing them that the game is about to start. The songs continue playing. We then discover that this celebration is actually a ghost wedding with the bride sitting alone. At this moment, we learn that Yoon and his companion's first mission is to survive until the wedding is completely over. Everyone is puzzled by the mission, and suddenly numerous tables filled with people appear, turning the entire place into a wedding hall. The girl who was with Yoon looks behind her at the people and notices that they look very strange, almost like zombies. She then turns to the expert and asks him about them, to which he replies, it's better if you don't ask. The more curious you are, the higher your chances of dying. Next, we see an old man among the guests approaching Yoon's table and saying, why aren't you eating? Yoon feels terrified by the old man's aura and tries to stay calm. Meanwhile, the girl with glasses talks to the expert again, asking him, what are we supposed to do now? The expert, visibly tense, responds to everyone and advises them to ignore the situation and remain seated as they are. The old man speaks again, this time angrily, saying, you are disrespecting me by refusing to eat on such a joyful day. He then shouts and asks someone present to offer them a drink. The people respond to his request and start approaching Yoon's table, offering drinks. Yoon thinks for a moment and notices that everyone here looks pale and extremely hungry despite the abundance of food available. He concludes that something is not right with the food. At that moment, 2 girls suddenly approach Yoon, one offering him a drink and the other presenting food. However, Yoon resists, keeping his mouth shut and refraining from doing anything. What happens with Yoon is repeated with everyone else until eventually one of the elderly men present, overwhelmed with fear, agrees to drink what the small children beside him have offered. After he finishes drinking, he says, look, I've done what you asked and drank the cup, so leave me now. But suddenly at that moment, the old man goes into shock, collapses to the ground, and begins foaming at the mouth. The ghosts present start laughing at him, saying, look at this man, he got drunk from the first drink. The girl who was with Yoon approaches the old man to check on him and discovers that he has been poisoned. Yoon is puzzled and thinks more deeply, realizing that this game is extremely dangerous. Suddenly, Yoon's system appears and gives him a new task, informing him that his mission is, if you save any of your companions, you will earn merit points. Yoon understands the mission and looks at the rest of his companions, all of whom are terrified and distraught by the scene in front of them. He concludes that this merit system is something only he possesses. After a while, the girl with glasses can no longer bear the situation and begins crying, pleading with the expert to save the old man. The expert becomes irritated and yells at the girls, saying the old man is the one who didn't listen to advice and drank in the end. He then explains that if he tries to save him, everyone could be put in danger. At that moment, Yoon steps forward and says, don't worry, I'll save the old man. He then pulls out an antidote pill he had purchased from the store, capable of curing existing poisoning cases. Yoon smiles and says, good thing I was able to make use of the products I bought from the store. After all, he approaches the old man to place the pill in his mouth. While everyone watches intently, the girl with glasses is astonished when she sees Yoon with the pill, as this is the first time Yoon has participated in this place. At that moment, as soon as Yoon places the pill in the old man's mouth, his body begins to glow with a golden aura, and the old man immediately returns to his normal state. The girl with glasses is amazed by the speed at which Yoon's remedy worked, while Yoon remains focused on the old man checking his condition. The old man thanks Yoon, saying, "Without you I would be dead now." Yoon smiles at him, and suddenly his system appears informing him that he has completed the mission and earned 7,000 merit points. Yoon feels a great sense of joy because this mission brought him significant benefits. Afterward, you'll notice is several other tasks available to him. Among these tasks, he must survive the entire wedding, save the bride by any means, steal the ghost mother statue, and finally uncover the truth behind this wedding. You don't think for a moment and says to himself, the primary task of surviving seems very easy, but its point reward is minimal. The side tasks, however, are difficult but offer a lot of points. He tries to decide what he should do, saying to himself, I don't need achievement points right now, but I should accumulate them for the future. Suddenly the girl with purple hair notices that all the guests in the area have disappeared and points this out to everyone. They all react with shock, and Yoon says it's possible they left when we weren't paying attention, and now they're probably preparing for something else. At this moment, the young man wearing a hat panics and says, I'm leaving this place, I don't want to stay here, but the expert tries to stop him from behind, asking him to calm down and not rush. However, the young man continues towards the door and tries to open it, only to find that it's locked. The expert quickly intervenes, grabbing the young man and throwing him to the ground, saying, you can't do reckless things or you'll die. The young man feels angry at the expert's words, but ultimately decides to remain silent. At that moment, An approaches them and speaks to the expert, saying, by the way, our friend is right, we can't just stay here doing nothing. The guests have now become hostile towards us. The expert remains adamant in his opinion, saying, but if we leave here we might fall into a trap. Yoon responds, you're wrong, because we have an ally in this place, and they will provide us with all the useful information. Of course, everyone is surprised by Yoon's words and begins to wonder who this ally could be. Yoon replies the ally is the bride. He then explains to them that this current event is a ghost wedding and the bride is certainly a victim of what is happening here, and she will help us. The expert counters Yoon's suggestion, refusing to accept his help, saying, but this bride might be a ghost like them and could harm us in the end. However, the young man who had been thrown to the ground gets up and decides to join Yoon and assist him. Even the girl with purple hair, sensing that you might be hiding something, decides to join him as well. The old man, who also wants to go with Yoon because he saved him earlier, is asked by Yoon to rest for now. The girl with glasses is very conflicted, but she holds the expert's hand and says she will stay with him. The conversation ends there, and Yoon talks to the expert, asking him to be vigilant with the people who are staying with him. Yul also says, if you're in danger, I want you to make a loud noise so I can hear you, and I'll try to help after that. Yoon sets off with the two who joined him, heading toward the bride's building. When they enter, they find the bride sitting in the middle, surrounded by terrifying statues from all directions. Yoon's friend is frightened by the sight and says that having paper effigies in a wedding room brings bad luck, but Yoon reassures him, saying, don't worry about anything, this is a ghost marriage. He then puts his hand in his pocket, holding on to something specific, and approaches the bride, speaking to her, we and those with me are trapped in this celebration. Can you help us escape this place? Young waits for a moment, but when he doesn't get any response from the bride, he decides to grab her veil and lift it from her face, only to be shocked when he discovers that she is just a paper bride. Yoon, stunned, yells out to his friends, asking them where the real bride is. Meanwhile, the girl with purple hair is puzzled by Young's certainty that there is a real bride in the place, thinking to herself, it seems this boy has information that no one else knows. Of course, you're knew about the bride because of the system and the mission it had given him. Yoon starts thinking about the mission and recalls that the bride's name is Bai, and he continues to wonder about her location. The girl with purple hair speaks to Yoon and says, let me examine the room, maybe I'll find a secret door or something like that. She begins to carefully inspect the room from side to side until she bumps into something and notices that it's a door. She turns to her friends and informs them, saying half of the bed here is hollow. You'll hear her and is impressed by her, as she was the first to discover that the old man had died, and now she proves her bravery once again by discovering this useful detail. After that, Yul and his other friend moved towards the bed, removing the paper bride and throwing it to the floor. When they all reach the bed, they grab its edge and lift it together, revealing a staircase leading to another place. Yoon's friend feels scared and asks him if they are really going to go down there. Yoon, feeling nervous himself, replies, we have to go down. They indeed descend the stairs, bringing a candle with them to light the way. As they start moving, the girl with Yoon comments that there is only one path. They follow this path, and as they walk, Yoon's friend stumbles over something on the ground. When he looks to see what he tripped over, he is shocked and falls to the ground in terror. When he discovers that it's a human hand, he starts screaming. However, the girl with them remains on phase, steps forward to examine the hand and says it's not real, it's just made of paper. Looking around, the girl then notices that there are many paper figurines scattered around Yoon's friend picks up one of the damaged legs and asks if all the figurines here are broken. Yoon, thinking deeply, and with growing concern responds, there are 6 figurines here, the same number as us in the game. Yoon becomes increasingly fearful, suspecting that these figurines were once players like them who had been turned into these paper forms. Young continues talking to his companions, saying in ancient times when a wealthy bride was getting married, she would travel in a procession with her dowry. This dowry didn't just include jewelry and money, it also included slaves. Now I want to tell you that we, the 6 players, might end up like those slaves, part of the ghost marriage dowry. Young then reflects and adds, since the bride is fake as well as the room in the dowry, it means the real wedding chamber must be at the end of this path we're on. He concludes by saying, you need to be ready because we might turn into figurines ourselves. Yoon's friends stand frozen in fear, but Yoon leaves them behind and starts running, telling them there's no time to waste and that they must find the bride as quickly as possible. His friends heed his words and join him in the dash. After some time running, they finally find the door they were searching for. Yoon rushes towards the door, opens it, and when they enter they find the bride indeed inside the room. Young is certain this time and says to them this is definitely the real bride. At that moment the bride is lying asleep. Yoon's friend approaches her and lifts the veil from her face, discovering that the bride is still alive and breathing, but she is unconscious. Yoon comes closer and asks, can we wake her up? His friend examines the bride and replies, it looks like she's in a coma, and we don't know when she might wake up. At that moment Yoon turns to his friend and asks him to come closer to help them. He instructs them to take turns carrying the bride. After some time Yoon and his friends manage to carry the bride and leave the room. Suddenly they hear the sound of someone running toward them. Yoon heads toward the sound and discovers that it's the old man and the girl with glasses who had stayed outside, both looking extremely terrified and begging for help from anyone. Yoon is shocked by their appearance and asks what's happening. The old man replies, the guests are coming now to kill us. The girl adds, this time they're coming at us with scythes and sharp tools, and our friend outside is trying to defend them off alone. Yoon quickly tries to take control of the situation, asking his friend next to him to take care of the bride, while he takes the others outside to see what's happening. Outside, the expert is standing in front of the ghostly guests, and we see that he has summoned his ghost servant. He speaks to the guests saying, if any of you come closer, the ghost servant behind me will kill you immediately. But the ghostly guests are unfazed and all rush at him. Simultaneously, without hesitation, the ghost servant strikes them with his sword, sending them flying. Jan watches the ghost servant and concludes that this is the power their expert friend has gained from the game, but suddenly and strangely the ghost servant jumps and whips the expert across the back. Yoon is shocked and wonders how can this ghost attack its master. As he looks at the expert, he notices many scars on his body, realizing that this is the price of using the ghost servant. At that moment, Yoon's system appears, congratulating him on his ability to analyze the situation. The system then reveals that there are 9 other similar things he must discover to receive the guidebook as a reward. Yoon examines the information about the ghost servant before him and discovers that its name is the Servant of Pain, a low-level ghost whose pleasure is torturing its user. Meanwhile, the girl with glasses is amazed by the power their expert friend possesses, but Yoon is not. He is concerned because the expert will not be able to endure much more due to the harm the ghost is causing him. Yoon turns to the old man and asks if they have found a way to escape the place. The old man responds, we found a short wall to the west that we can easily climb over. And hears this, and everyone starts moving toward the wall. Yoon speaks to the expert, urging them to follow him toward the western wall, but things don't go as smoothly as planned. The old ghost orders his followers to capture Yoon and his team. The ghosts approach quickly, and just as one of them seems about to attack the girl with glasses, the other girl moves swiftly, kicking the ghost and sending it flying. Simultaneously, another ghost attacks her from behind, but she sees it coming, grabs its arm, and throws it to the ground before delivering a powerful blow that destroys it. The men in the team are stunned by her actions, staring at her in disbelief. She yells at them, why are you standing there? Let's escape now. At that moment, the expert joins them and says, unfortunately, I can't use the ghost servant any longer. I can only use it for 3 attacks. Yoon responds by pulling out a golden paper from his pocket and says, well, it seems I'll have to make a desperate decision. The expert is amazed when he sees Yoon pulling out the paper and notices that the ghost servant is frightened by Yoon, then uses the talisman he has, unleashing a powerful golden light, and begins reciting some words to activate the spell. After he finishes, he throws 3 papers at the ghosts, and suddenly a large fire erupts, burning everything in its path. The expert is still in all of the talisman and says to Yoon, if you have more of these, use them now to destroy everyone. But Yoon replies, don't get too excited. This talisman is designed to kill demons, and since most of what we're facing are ghosts, it won't be able to kill them. The expert, shocked, asks Yoon, so what can we do now? Yoon smiles and says, let's stick to the original plan. Yoon starts running and leaps over the wall to escape, urging the others to do the same. Everyone follows his lead and manages to escape. Meanwhile, we see some enemies patrolling the area, searching for them. At that moment, the expert and the girl with purple hair are hiding in the hay. Suddenly they spring out from behind the enemies, attacking them, and then drag their bodies away to hide them. Eventually the entire team regroups in one room. The girl with purple hair speaks to everyone and says we need to keep moving. Everyone in this place is searching for us. The man with the hat looks at Yoon and asks what should we do now, and starts thinking and realizes that they've saved the bride and escaped the area, but the wedding hasn't ended yet. He wonders why and senses that something is missing that they haven't discovered yet. At that moment the bride who had been unconscious makes a sound and the girl with glasses notices it and tells everyone that Bai is starting to wake up. Indeed, Bai opens her eyes and Yoon approaches her to check on her and asks if she remembers her name. Bai hesitantly answers with her name and then asks who are you anyway. Yoon replies we're currently trapped in a ghost wedding and asks her if she knows anything about this marriage. Bai responds I don't remember anything except that I was kidnapped a few days ago to be the bride and I don't know why. Young tries to explain further saying we still don't know how to end this wedding. And if we don't we might all die. Moreover, if the wedding doesn't end your fate won't be good either. He finally asks her to try to remember anything that might help them. Bai tries to recall some memories and suddenly she remembers and says there were women forcing me to wear the wedding dress and I heard the old man talking to someone else, telling him that the path from the ancestral hall to the Nyang temple must be clear to avoid delaying the wedding. Yoon hears the name of the temple and feels uneasy because he knows well that the temple is connected to the evil lord of the three rivers. He then looks at his friends and says I think we need to go to the ancestral hall to end this wedding. At that moment Yoon's friend is overcome with fear and rejects the idea, saying that place is full of ghosts and anyone who tries to enter there must be crazy. But Yoon, having already prepared his plan, doesn't care about his friend's objections. He pulls out a talisman and says every problem here has a solution. He then uses the talisman, which is a concealment spell that hides anyone within a 5-meter radius around Yoon. As the spell activates, Young warns his friends be very careful, your invisibility will be revealed if someone touches you. After that they all begin moving together, rushing toward the ancestral hall. Young informs them that the spell's duration is limited. After a while they reach the stairs leading to the temple. Young's cowardly friend becomes excited and starts waving his hand in front of one of the ghosts, then looks at Young and tells him that they are indeed invisible. Young, annoyed by his friend's behavior, tells him to stop fooling around. They can continue on their way, climbing the stairs until they reach the entrance. They open the door, enter the hall, and close the door behind them. At that moment the girl with purple hair notices something and says to Yoon, by the way, there's a staircase here that leads to the top of the mountain. Young hears her and says all right, let's move now and see if we can find anything there. Suddenly Yoon is taken aback by something unexpected. He finds a book about the history of the village. He quickly approaches it, takes the book, and opens it to discover what it contains. As Yoon reads the book he learns that in the 17th year of Emperor Long's reign, black rain fell from the sky, causing no crops to grow in the area. As a result, a terrible famine broke out, leading people to cannibalism. Since then evil spirits began appearing and spreading everywhere. After this revelation the group continues moving and exits through the back door to climb the mountain. At that moment Yoon extends his hand to Bai to help her up and then asks if she knows anything about the black rain mentioned in the village's history. Bai is surprised by the question and realizes that no one really knows the truth, as there are many rumors surrounding the topic. She recounts that among those rumors it was said that the emperor was evil and killed good people, and that the sky was angered by his crimes, leading to the black rain. Bai continues saying, in truth I've heard about this rain for a long time and wanted to come back here to understand more after I left the place. At this moment the cowardly person interrupts, mocking Bai by saying surely you didn't come here because of the ghosts and monsters that stopped you. The girl with purple hair becomes angry at his words and hits him hard on the head, telling him stop talking like that. Meanwhile Yoon continues to ponder and says the history mentioned that the Nyang temple saved the village from the black rain, but at the same time it turned the villagers into half ghosts and half demons. Just then the expert suddenly raises his hand and asks everyone to stop. The girl with glasses asks him what's going on, and the expert, looking tense, replies we've arrived. Everyone looks at the temple and notices its frightening appearance and the ominous aura surrounding it, filling them all with fear. Suddenly the expert realizes the danger of the situation they found themselves in and urges everyone to flee quickly as they won't be able to handle this place. But as he's shouting, a figure emerges from inside the temple and says to them, now that you've come this far you cannot return. The expert doesn't hesitate and summons his ghost servant to attack the intruder with a whip, but the stranger easily catches the whip and asks the expert if he belongs to the incarnation sect because he's using exorcism powers. The expert responds, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. The mysterious figure replies, while preparing a talisman, the ghost servant with you is actually a wild fox spirit, which is why I will never underestimate its power in facing an evil spirit like this. Then a strange circle appears in the mysterious figure's hand as he raises it, and within seconds he makes the ghost servant disappear from the scene. Yoon is filled with worry and shock at what just happened and says, I can't believe our enemy was able to control the ghost servant with just a wave of his hand. He thinks to himself, It's clear that this opponent is not easy and will be very powerful. The mysterious figure continues to draw the ghost servant until he places it inside a vessel, saying that it is incomplete but still considered a rare artifact. After that, the mysterious figure seals the vessel containing the ghost, and at that moment the ghost's user collapses to the ground and loses consciousness. The figure then turns to Bai with a terrifying look and asks if she is the ghost bride. Bai, terrified by his appearance, falls to her knees and begs him not to come any closer. The figure gradually approaches her, saying, "Your skin is like snow and your features make you the perfect bride." He then adds, "The ghost mother who will marry you will be very pleased." At this point, Yoon intervenes and asks the mysterious figure what exactly are the requirements that the ghost mother wants in a bride. The figure becomes angry and glares at Yoon with a terrifying expression, asking, "How dare you interrupt me?" Yoon is filled with fear, but he tries to stall for time to find an opportunity to end the game. He says to the mysterious figure, "Don't worry, we're friends of the bride, and as you know, we'll die soon anyway." The enemy is impressed by Yoon's reasoning and smiles at him. He then looks at Yoon's clothes and says, "Your clothes are strange." Suddenly, the figure places his hand on Yoon's shoulder, making his appearance even more frightening, and says, "I know you're going to die soon, and that's what makes you bold enough to speak to me this way." He moves closer and asks, "Tell me, who exactly are you?" Yoon responds to the enemy, whom we now learn is a priest, saying, "Actually, I'm a foreigner, and in our culture